So I think we can all agree, Biotech DLC is by far the best DLC in Rimworld. Mechanoids are amazing and allow for actually small colonies to function really well. Gene types, xenotypes, and everything in between has been absolutely huge for Rimworld, and it's probably been the biggest addition we've ever had to Rimworld. And then Sanguophages, a really unique xenotype that honestly you would never thought to add to Rimworld, but it's been done perfectly. Now these three things are huge, and unfortunately do overlook a small part of the Biotech DLC and the update that came with that, and it is a actually very important feature in my opinion. I'm talking about pollution, I'm talking about toxic waste packs, and I'm talking about making things extremely industrial and making the world disgusting. Now thankfully today's mod, Toxicity Evolved, does help improve the situation in terms of content and what we have available in terms of the pollution. Let's get into things and start with the content. So the content, let's start by looking at the Steam Workshop page. What is there and what do we see? So we start with some nice lovely pictures of one of the actual thumbnail of this mod and another one to tell us what's been added. Nice, I like these. Then let's get into the bulk of things. This is all there is. There's not much here. We have a list of what this mod adds, some future plans, and then some compatibilities and what you need to be running this mod. But that's it. I bang on about the mod page, and I think it's really important for mod creators to be able to advertise their mod efficiently and effectively to get the most amount of people to download this mod, because otherwise what's really the point? I think this definitely needs to be improved. I'd love to see some images of what's actually been added, some actual recipes for what can be done with the stuff that's been added, because there's a lot that can be shown off here. So far we need some improvement. So what does this content look like in game? So we have access to 5 new items and 1 new structure. One of these items is the toxic equivalent of chem fuel, another one is just the toxic equivalent of hay grass, and the other 3 are used in the process to make the toxic equivalent of beer, and then a toxic chem fuel generator. Very spread across the board here, and I think this sets up a really nice basis for future improvements for this mod. So how do we access these items and where are we going to use them? Well, the toxic equivalent of chem fuel, we make it a biofuel refinery. You more or less the same as chem fuel with a slightly different recipe, and then the toxic equivalent of beer, we make the exact same way. We grow something, we refine it into the wort and everything, and then we make it into the beer. I will say that this feels so far like a very vanilla expanded mod. If you told me that this stuff was made by Oscar and his team, I would kind of believe you so far. And then next, as the only drug that's been added by this mod, I wanted to show you off the Toxahol a little bit. The Toxahol acts pretty much the exact same way as beer. There's a few differences in stats here and there, but what happens is when you drink it, you get added toxic buildup. A nice little touch that honestly, when I noticed, I thought, wow, this makes sense and I like it. But we'll look further into that later in the video. So that's going to be it for the content now. Where am I at with this? The Steam Workshop page definitely needs some improvement. I want to see some more images and I want to see some more vivid descriptions, and that will really help advertise this mod further. And then in-game, there's not too much here. This mod definitely does a good job of spreading itself out across power generation, food and drink, and then feeding animals as well. And I do like that. I like that it is attempting to do everything at once and really give the vanilla enhanced experience. But, and there is a big but here, it doesn't necessarily go deep enough to provide enough gameplay opportunities for me to remain interested. It doesn't necessarily do enough either that I can try everything out with a long colony experience. There's a really good setup for a fantastic mod here, and I genuinely think that if this mod creator keeps going at developing this mod, adding more features and doing more and more things to enhance the toxic and polluted experience of Rimworld, this could definitely be probably the best mod for pollution-based gameplay. This mod has got so much potential, and I can see that the mod creator definitely wants to do that, but it's not there yet. So at the time of recording, I think I can only give this mod 6 out of 10 for content at this current moment in time. Like I said, potential for this mod is huge. What we've got so far is okay. We're just not there yet. Next, let's look at the quality of the items added by this mod. Now, going forward for this quality section, I will be comparing these to the vanilla base game graphics. I'll be assuming that this mod is a vanilla expanded experience, so I'm expecting the graphics to kind of follow up on that as well as we go. So, zooming in on everything, everything looks literally the exact same as something in the vanilla game, just retextured. Nothing wrong with that. For a mod that I'm assuming is just a vanilla enhanced experience, it all makes sense. Then looking at the beer, this almost looks like tequila. I don't know why and what tequila I've been drinking, but I'm getting real sort of tequila vibes from this, and I'm definitely going to be going for the fact that tequila is definitely poison. I love the texture on this, and it really does show that this is polluted, if not toxic. And then looking at the chem fuel equivalent generator, I'm not too keen on the quality of this one. I don't know why. Something doesn't seem quite right with it, but it's still all okay. For a vanilla expanded experience, all these textures do the job, which is enough for me. Next, let's quickly look at the plants and see what they look like when they're growing / grown. So starting with the hay grass equivalent, it's green, it's growing, it gets bigger, it looks just like hay grass. Fair enough. Next, the toxibulbs. So these are going to be used to making the wart and everything to make the toxahole. And once again, these start off small little plants and then they get really big. So I think generally the quality of the items added by this mod are very much a vanilla and enhanced experience. They're all a little bit better, some of them a little bit worse, but generally we can all tell that they're modded, which is obviously very, very important. I think, however, I would like to see a couple of the textures increased a little bit more fidelity and make them actually HD, just so it looks a little bit nicer. I don't know, I feel like some items are definitely better than others. I think overall for quality though, because there are some issues here and there, and I think things could generally be improved, but I do like things like the beer. It makes sense and I like that a lot. I'm gonna give it a very solid 7 out of 10. Definitely could be better, but I can appreciate this is a vanilla experience enhanced, so I'm not expecting the world. Next, the balancing. So next, let's look at the balancing of the items in this mod. Now, there's pretty much only two things we're going to be looking at within this section: the toxic fuel generator and the power generation that it gives, and the toxic fuel itself and how easy it is to access and how good it actually is. So let's look at the generators themselves in Rimworld. You'll probably notice here that I'm not using the geothermal generator nor the solar panels here because I don't actually think they are relevant within this comparison. So let's start with the bioferrite generator. This produces 4,000 watts and has enough fuel for 10 days. The wood fire generator produces 1,000 watts and has enough fuel for 3.5 days. The chem fuel power generator also produces 1,000 watts and has enough fuel for 6.6 days. The toxifier generator produces 1,400 watts, but then spits out 6 tiles of pollution every 3 days. And then the toxic fuel power generator produces 2,500 watts and has enough fuel for 10 days, but then also spits out 8 tiles of pollution every 2.5 days. So as we can see, the toxic fuel power generator is kind of a hybrid of the toxifier generator and the chem fuel power generator at the same time. Makes sense, definitely a vanilla enhanced experience. However, it is significantly better than both of those items aforementioned. It's significantly better than the toxifier generator and the chem fuel generator, even producing more than those two combined. That is pretty good. I would maybe like to see a slight reduction on the amount of power produced here. So the toxic fuel generator seems pretty good. Let's go into the actual way to get toxic fuel in a biofuel refinery and see how balanced it actually is. So chem fuel from wood, a basic recipe, 70 wood to 35 chem fuel. Chem fuel from organics is another basic recipe, 70 organics, 35 chem fuel. To make toxic fuel from chem fuel requires 50 chem fuel and 5 toxic waste pack to get 75 chem fuel, a nice new recipe that I think makes perfect sense. Then in order to get toxic fuel from chem fuel, it requires 50 chem fuel to then get 30 toxic fuel. So comparing chem fuel and toxic fuel, it's very easy to access toxic fuel. Now it does require the exact same research in order to access chem fuel generators to toxic fuel generators, biofuel refinery to make the stuff, and electricity there to then place it and build it. It seems too easy to get this toxic fuel, especially for how much better it is. Remember, it requires 2.5 chem fuel generators to match the equivalent power output of 1 toxic fuel powered generator. Now, if you're playing in a biome that's got a temperate forest, you've got mechanoids, you've got access to toxic waste packs, you can then make that into the toxic fuel, you're going to be absolutely swimming in power if you're playing this right. The only way that I can see this being balanced is that the toxic fuel generators only work if there are unpolluted tiles, and if with the spread of 8 tiles per 3.5 days, you're going to be filling up that area fairly quickly. But if you're playing with mods and you can clean up pollution with clean sweepers, you know, it doesn't really matter. So far, I'm not too sure. So far, it seems a little bit too easy to access the toxic fuel. For the amount of power that you can get, for the amount of work you put in, the numbers just add up way too easily and we're getting too much for what we're doing. So, what if we nerfed it? What if we made it so the biofuel refinery only gave us 15 toxic fuel, or reduced the amount and increased the workload hugely? What would we rely on? Well, this mod changes toxolopes to produce toxofuel themselves. So here I have a colonist, he comes over and milks it, and we only get 8 toxofuel. This actually makes sense. We then have a herd of toxolope, and yes, they will be producing a decent amount of toxofuel every few days, but it feels more fair. I'm not going to be able to go absolutely wild and put down like 60 of these toxofuel generators, get an absolute shed load of electricity for free practically. I'm actually going to only be able to maybe maintain 1 or 2 of these toxofuel generators. This makes sense, and I think if we then follow that through with the biofuel refinery, nerf that down a little bit, even just nerf the power generation so I'm still going to be using chem fuel power generators, this could definitely be a lot more balanced. So whilst we're talking about the toxolopes, let's look at the other feature that's been added by this mod. Toxolopes are now pack animals. Nice. Now, how much can they carry? According to this, they can carry 105. Now, this is just a number. What does that actually mean? Let's compare that to another animal in base game vanilla Rimworld. This means that the toxolopes can carry the equivalent of a donkey. I don't actually agree with this. I think this is a pretty weird decision. I'd like to see that maybe they're comparable to a alpaca, maybe? I'm not sure why we've had to make them pack animals. It's a change that's been made. I get it. It makes it more viable to have toxic animals, but I don't think this was needed. I'd much rather see some other changes, definitely. So lastly, let's compare the Toxahol to the regular beer. Now, you'd be glad to know that on paper, these do pretty much the exact same thing. The only difference is that Toxahol provides a toxic buildup if you drink too many, you get more recreation, and it's cheaper to get. So generally speaking, it is better to have Toxahol compared to normal beer. You just got to be careful about toxic immunities and so on and so forth. But overall, you're going to be wanting Toxahol over beer. So that's going to be it for the balancing. Let's go through the things that I think are balanced to start with. I think the Toxahol to the beer makes perfect sense. Yes, the Toxahol does give you more recreation percentage gain, but at the cost of toxic buildup, which makes perfect sense. And then the fuel that you can harvest from toxolopes, only 8 is a perfect amount in my opinion. The only way that's going to be overpowered is if you have like 50 toxolopes, and who's really going to be doing that? Now, for the things that I don't think are balanced and the things that I don't like, I don't understand why the mod creator has put toxolopes and donkeys at the same level of pack animal ability. I don't understand. What I want to see here is a nerf to the toxolopes carrying capacity, or what should be even better is if we see a brand new toxic equivalent of the donkey added by this mod, which would make perfect sense even further. Then moving on, we've got the toxofuel. Toxofuel is too easy to access within this mod. At the moment, it's on the exact same equivalent of tech requirements as chem fuel. Biofuel refinery and electricity is all you need in order to access the toxofuel. I don't like it. Like I said, it's too easy to access in terms of tech and resources. I think we definitely need to see an increase in the amount of resources it takes to craft toxofuel, or reduce the amount of toxofuel to be like 10 or 15, and then make it more viable to have lots of toxolopes. Or, in fact, we could just reduce the amount of power that's outputted by the extremely overpowered at its current stage toxofuel powered generator. 2,500 watts is a huge amount, especially when you compare it to the toxicity generator and the chem fuel power generator, beating it by double, which is actually crazy. So I think for balancing overall, we're not there yet. I think we've got some leaps and bounds to go across in order to get there, but all these changes are pretty easy to implement, let's be fair. So I think at this current stage, I'm going to give balancing a 6 out of 10. We're definitely not there yet, but some of the balancing is pretty good. So next, let's look at the compatibility. Are there any bugs I need to let you know about and how this fit with your playthroughs? Now, in terms of bugs, I always start by looking at the Steam Workshop page comment section to see what people have reported. And at this current moment in time, there's not much here. In my opinion, though, I had no issues with bugs or anything. However, I can see that maybe if you play with other mods that also add chem fuel replacements, there could be some issues here and there, so just be careful with that. Now, the next bug / issue I've got with this mod is actually the Toxahol. As I've mentioned, the Toxahol gives a toxic buildup. So what I've got here is a baseline of human, and I've got a waster. The wasters come with a pollution stimulus. Now, the Toxahol is very polluted. It's toxic, it's pollution, it's all of that put in one. However, if I get a waster and I get them to drink this, they also get the toxic buildup. Now, what I thought here was that because it's only just had the one effect, it's not actually stimulated the pollution stimulus thing. So what I did was I got a waster, got them absolutely blackout drunk on Toxahol, and there's only been an increase of toxic buildup and no pollution stimulus. I would love to see the pollution stimulus stuff added as an extra effect for the wasters and anybody with the pollution stimulus gene type. Otherwise, not too bad. I mean, it's not that big of an issue, let's be fair. So how this is mod going to fit in with your playstyles? Now, funnily enough, this isn't going to fit in the tribal and medieval era. This is perfect for the industrial era stuff, utilizing mods such as Rim Factory and pretty much any mechanoid mod. This mod would go great with anything in that style. And because it is a very niche mod and only going to be used within pollution-based playthroughs, in my opinion, it's going to be restrictive in the amount of playstyles that you can fit this with. However, because of what is added in this mod and the content that could be potentially added with this mod, I think this is a key mod and an essential mod for you to be using if you are going to be playing with wasters or anything that is pollution based. So I think for compatibility, yes, there are no bugs that I can see, but you're not going to be able to play this with very many other mods unless you are playing with a very specific playstyle and playthrough in mind. So for compatibility, I'm very content giving it a 5 out of 10. So next, let's look at my mod recommendations, and like I said in the compatibility section, this mod is very niche, so I've gone for mods that reflect that really well. So let's start with the More Tox Plants mod, just to really increase the amount of fauna that you can see on your map. Next, Outland Toxic Forest to make your map look as good as humanly possible. Next, the Conservationist and Pollution Mort's Ideologies, memes and precepts, so you can get as many mood buffs from all the pollution everywhere. And then 2 mods by Oscar Patoki here, the Vanilla Expanded Waste Animals mod, and the Vanilla Races Expanded Waster for very obvious reasons. Like I said, all these mods are very niche and they all fit a waster, polluted, toxic vibe, and that's about it. Yes, you could be running run and gun and all those very much utility mods, but for the amount of content, there's not really any mods that I can necessarily recommend. So I think for mod recommendations, just because of how niche I think this mod is and how it doesn't really fit with much else, I'm gonna be giving it a 4 out of 10. So in conclusion, where am I at with this mod? I think this mod is good. I think the potential for this mod is huge, and I think that the things that this mod tries to do is impressive, but it's not there yet. Because this area of the modding community in Rimworld is so small, like you barely see any mods specifically for the wasters, for pollution, for toxicity. The things that this mod doesn't do, there isn't anything else out there to replace it, because we just don't have the amount of mods there yet. However, if this mod does continue to be developed and we continue to get more of what we're already seeing, we could see a fantastic mod and an essential for any sort of pollution-based playthrough in the future. But at this current stage in time, we're not quite there yet. So for content, I gave it 6 out of 10, quality 7 out of 10, balancing 6 out of 10 again, and for compatibility 5 out of 10, then mod recommendations 4 out of 10, giving it the grand total score of 28 out of 50, which is a C rated mod. And honestly, I think that is very fair. Like I said, at this current stage in time, we just don't quite have enough to look at here, and I think the balancing is definitely a little bit off with the toxic fuel powered generators that I think just needs to be looked at a little bit more. But mainly what this mod is lacking is content, good deep amount of it. A few more additions to this mod and we could be looking at a solid A-rated mod here, just a little bit more and we are there. But don't base your opinions off what I've said. Check this mod out for yourself and use it in your own toxic based playthrough. So if you have enjoyed today's video, consider liking, subscribing. Make sure you tell your mum about me and I'll see you next time. Thank you.